Should we start?
Yeah.
Okay. So hello everybody. Can you all hear me? Welcome to our third debate. And I'm going to start by explaining how this series of debates came about. And they came about very spontaneously. I think it was in the beginning of quarantine when we were starting to see the how institutions were responding to quarantine, to the crisis. And then I rang Maaike and we started chatting and wondering whether these responses they were appropriate or whether there would be opportunities to learn something different from the quarantine that could be implemented, and that started to become a debate between us. And I remember I was at the window and I said, well, if there is food for thought between us, perhaps we should bring others to come and join this conversation. And so we started like organizing this, and and I think it's a time where we all have lots of questions, so it helps us to create a space to think together. And now I want to run through a few things with you. First, the introduction to today's topic, which is care. And care for each other is a core human value, yet is rarely seen in its integrity. COVID-19 uncovered further the unhealthy structure of capitalism, which does not share care universally from the values that drive our wants and needs, travel behaviors, community culture, and the environment. COVID-19 sent us into isolation, limited physical touch, and exacerbates the shortfalls of health systems globally. It created a space for a new kind of care. I'm just pausing to admit some people who are in the waiting room. Does the art world really care? How institutions, independent curators, and artists can take the new experience reality and urge to take care of each other into the future. And then we created a set of like sub-questions to help us frame the discussion. In terms of interpersonal care, what are the elements of care that you had to implement during isolation? And how does these elements differ from the elements of care that were implemented in relation to your personnel in case of like institutions and residents? Institutional, how can institutions take care of themselves while take care of the artists? If curating is related to the word curare, of humans and non-humans, how are you going to think differently about this activity now? And contextual questions, how can taking better personal care transcend to the environment and policy once the lockdown is over? How can take care moving from personal hygiene to helping your neighbor to planting trees? And now I want to talk a bit about the project ARCA. ARCA was founded last August in São Paulo to address the urgency of the challenge of the world that the world faces and put it at risk. The rise of opportunities to conceive a new world and the role of art as a vehicle for this transition. The current pandemic made ARCA's mission even more crucial and created the need for a diverse and global discussion around some of the most pressing cultural questions facing us during and post-pandemic. In terms of housekeeping, this is like, it's meant to last 90 minutes, so it's 10 o'clock in São Paulo. So it's another, 80 to 90 minutes. It's meant to finish 11:30 here. The idea is to have 3 parts. So we have a first set of 30 minutes where I'll do this introduction, and then Michael will do an introduction. Then we have 20 minutes where we have 7 speakers. They will talk 2 minutes each. And then we have a second block of 30 minutes where people will have their statements. They will comment on the topic. And the final 30 minutes block is to open debate so that people can speakers can ask questions to each other. If the audience has questions, they can put in the chat, and as much as we can, we will address those. This is being recorded. If you're not receiving our emails, you can put your email address on the chat, and then we include it in the mailing list. For security reasons, we are sharing the link. This is advice from Zoom itself. We are sharing the link via email and not openly. If the speakers can mind the times so that we can all get to talk evenly and share their opinion and their situation, like their position. And I think it's what interests us and the potential for the future. And I think I covered most of it. And I think to finalize, I often think as a historian when like this topic of care came up, obviously we look around and we see in our day-to-day, we see in the news why it's important, but I try to dig back and see where it comes from. And I kind of identified 3 tracks in art history that somehow the evolution can bring to care. One is the track of institutional critique, which is very strong, perhaps since the 70s, the 80s. And the other is the track of decolonization from the 18th forward. And the topic of care is very present in that tradition too. And I also see in terms of relational art, which does bring us to more empathy and to more care for each other. And so now I'll hand over the talk to Maaike and for her introduction before we start.
Okay, thank you, João. Welcome, everyone. I would like to first introduce all our panelists, all the people that are so generous to join in. The idea for the panel is always to have people from all over the world so that we don't have like one specific view and that we also get a good idea of what the current situation of the pandemic is and how people relate to it on a more personal level. But it's very good to not only have like speakers from Europe or speakers from Africa or from Australia, but to have this mix so that that we get inspired by each other and that we can learn from each other. From Norway, Oslo, we have Geir Haraldseth, waving. And from Nigeria, Lagos, we have Jelili Atiku. And from Ramallah in Palestine, we have Lara Khaldi. From New York, we have Laurel Ptak. And is Naine there? João, is Naine there already?
Georgia, who is her translator, is in Georgia. Can you let me ask her to start the video? I think it's Georgia.
Yeah, Naine is trying to come in, so she's reinitiating the machine, okay?
Right.
Yeah. And then we have from Johannesburg in South Africa, Thuthuka Sibisi. Thank you all for joining in. It's a mix of curators, artists, educators. What I always find very important with the panel is that there is a moment that you can say where you are, what your situation is, and how it basically affects also your personal life. So we start with a round with that, and then after that we can shortly speak about care, and you can take whatever focus you like. Why I wanted to speak about care and why João and I divided it in all these topics is that I see that a lot of people around me in the art world, but also in other organizations or institutions or wherever you work, it seems that people take very different care of each other. Like when I speak to my family, their bosses check in with them many more times than normally, like how they're doing, how their personal situation is. Geir told me that his boss is like working from a bunk bed of one of her children and is doing all her meetings. I know from other arts institutions that while they do the Zoom meetings, they always check in with each other. So I thought, how can that element of being so much more personal, how can you take that after the lockdown, and how could that be implemented in more organizational structures or more formal ways of always thinking about that part of taking care? Because I think after the lockdown is over and the economy starts again like the normal way, if that's even possible, people can forget about it very quickly. But of course, it's very different for being a freelance curator or being an artist, or where you are in this spectrum in the art world, how you respond to this and what you think has a potential, which element of the crisis in relation to care has the potential to be explored afterwards. So my current situation, I'm just going to start with the 2-minute little talk about my personal situation. And before I do that, I forgot to introduce Maggie McWilliams, who works with me here in New Orleans and who is making notes and making a small report about every meeting. We're also recording the whole panel, and we're going to see what's going to happen with it. For all the panelists, we're not going to share it just randomly. We will always ask your permission. That said, I'm in New Orleans. I run a residency here for international artists. We're here with 3 artists that are based in the Netherlands, but they're from different countries. We're in lockdown in New Orleans. It's lockdown going to be till 15th of May, but we are allowed to go on the streets to meet with people on 6 feet distance, and we can even do little road trips. So while we're kind of obstructed by daily life, we still have a very, very luxurious position, like luxurious situation where we can share with each other, where we live together, and where we can basically do half of the research that we were planning to do. So that's my situation. Let's go to Geir. Would you like to share yours?
Sure. So like you said, I am here in Oslo in Norway. I am working as a curator at the National Museum of Contemporary Art, which is opening a new building next year. So we don't have a lot of public programming, but I've been in home office for almost 2 months. I was on a quarantine after traveling on my international jet set curatorial cahoots to Lisbon. So that was a quarantine after that. So it's been almost 2 months of home officing with my boyfriend and my cat. And I've been renovating the kitchen, painting the bedroom, and ordering a new sofa. So diversions. Yeah.
Thank you. Jelili?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your situation there? What you do as an artist, what the lockdown situation is, and how you or your community respond to it?
Yeah. Well,